Are you able to identify the different types of cross-site scripting attacks and cross-site request forgery attacks that are commonplace nowadays? If not, well, that's coming up next.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Welcome back to Security Plus here at IT Pro TV, and today it's all about the cross-site somethings, right? That's what we're doing. We're going to start off with some cross-site scripting and move on with a dash of cross-site request forgery. Wes, I'm so glad you're joining us today because you're going to help us kind of work our way through these different things. Let's start off with cross-site scripting. What the heck is that, by the way?
All right, very good. Well, we'll just start here at the beginning. What is cross-site scripting? All right, when we look at cross-site scripting, essentially what it is it's a type of attack, all right, that injects some kind of malicious script that we want to execute in the web browser, right? It can typically be a legitimate or a trusted website, and the victim, a lot of times, is going to be none the wiser that attack is even happening.
Awesome. So this gives us our textbook definition. That's exactly what we need. If I'm not mistaken, that's all that CompTIA wants from us. So we thank you for joining us. We thank you. But I feel like there might be a little more. Yeah, he's like, oh, there's more to the story, Lowry.
Right.
Just let's keep this ball rolling. Yeah, let's totally, because there are actually a few different types that would probably help us and our awareness of them, correct?
Most definitely, and what Dan's kind of joking around and alluding to is the fact that if you are looking at the CompTIA objectives, they really just call out cross-site scripting. But it is important, I would say, to notice or know that there are a few different types, right? 3 different types to be exact. There's what's known as the reflected XSS attack, which I'm probably going to make a horrible slaughtering of that acronym, as good as I am an acronym.
I'm going to love every last second.
Very good. Very good. Laughing at my pain.
Yes.
That's right.
Oh, and that was bad, Wes.
That's
Please
right.
continue.
The next one is going to be the stored cross-site scripting attack, and then finally one that we'll talk just briefly about, a little bit more sophisticated, and that is the DOM or document object model based cross-site scripting attacks.
All right, awesome. So let's start breaking these down. Let's go ahead and jump on reflected cross-site scripting. What defines a reflected cross-site scripting attack?
Okay, sure. So when we get started here, we'll go ahead and we'll take our victim here, right? Our victim is going to, think about it, going to interact with a web browser of some sort. But before that happens, our attacker crafts some kind of malicious link, if you will, embeds it in an email. Our user here clicks on it, if you will, and maybe it's in that email and it says, click me, all right, or click here, or, see details or something, right? That's all they can see. They know it's a hyperlink, right? It's usually blue.
Oh,
right?
yeah. We see those in our emails all the time.
Sure.
To retrieve this, promo code, click here, takes you to a website, you get the code, you're all good to go. But it doesn't actually have all the URL details. It's just a highlighted text.
Kind of obscures it.
Yeah, like click here kind of thing.
Definitely. And so what happens is inside of the URL itself, they have crafted some kind of script execution that when that user logs on, the link opens and it performs some kind of unauthorized action, whatever it is that the attacker is looking to achieve. And that could be many of things, a variety of things, right?
Yeah, my favorite way to exploit this type of vulnerability is to do session stealing, right? Where
Sure.
I grab a session token, session hijacking, I guess it's called.
Yep.
You grab that session token with that request, and it just pops right into my little server that's waiting for those logs to come in. Now I've got that token. I can put that into my browser and act as that person and make purchases or do whatever it is I want to do based off of that. So reflected seems like not a big deal, but it actually can be and is used quite often.
And from what I hear, this is one of the most common and more simpler types, if you will, simplicity, if you will.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons they're more common.
Yeah, it's not difficult to pull this off. It's more the pretexting and the social engineering that goes behind the email address,
Right.
and finding a vulnerable server. Those are the 2 difficult pieces. After that, it's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty easy after that. All right, so there's reflected.
Sure.
Let's move on to a stored cross-site scripting.
Sure.
Explain that one for us.
Most definitely. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start with the attacker itself. An attacker, again, is going to interact with a web browser, and they're going to insert let's say, a script into a comment section. let's think about this, right? When you go to like a news feed, you browse to a news feed or something like that, right? And you can typically leave some kind of information in some of the fields in there, right? Well, essentially what happens is in those comment fields, rather than, hey, I absolutely love this video. Hey, thanks, can you leave me the directions for the recipe or something? Instead, what happens is your attacker actually embeds that script in there. So then what happens here is the script gets stored, and then our victim here browses to that news article, if you will, and then when they do, that script executes, and it ends up being downloaded into the web browser and then executed from there. So you can see it's actually stored on the server versus just being reflected.
Gotcha. So basically the difference between reflected versus stored is with a reflected attack, a user can input something and it's being reflected back by the web page.
Sure, and it's all client side.
Right. And unfortunately, it'll execute JavaScript or whatever, right? With stored, the attacker's actually leaving it there, and anybody that subsequently goes to that area, doesn't matter who it is, and you can have a legitimate URL, doesn't have any scripting in it at all, as long as they land on that page.
That's right.
And their browser is executing scripts.
That's right. It can pull it down, and it can exploit, and again lead to whatever unauthorized action the attacker wants to.
This feels like it's really good for those like watering hole type attacks.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people go to the same place. It's got a script on it. Bam, they're getting nailed. So that sounds like a lot of fun. All right, let's move on to the I can say it. Document object model.
Yes.
Right? And he was worried that he was going to butcher stuff. The DOM-based. Let's do it that way. The DOM-based XSS. Explain that one for us.
Well, sure. So with DOM-based, this is more of an advanced type of cross-site scripting attack, and what it does is it basically allows the attack. Essentially, what's going to happen is there's going to be a processing of untrusted information, and it writes to that again. There I go. Document object model, which really is just a standardized way to represent and format or structure a document within a website. And this is more of the client-side attack. So just be aware of it, that it's one of the more advanced, if not the most advanced, of the cross-site scripting attacks.
All right. Well, now that we've got cross-site scripting kind of squared away, let's move on to that cross-site request forgery attacks. This is a really interesting attack and has gained a lot of popularity within the last few years. I've seen it kind of grow more and more because of how devastating it can be. Because it's basically taking advantage of stuff that we take for granted every day. Is that not right?
Oh, definitely. So we'll talk about two different types here. We're going to talk about what a cross-site request forgery is, but then we're going to also talk about the server side versus the client side aspect of this. So when we look at the very first one, just a cross-site request forgery attack, it really is a lot like a reflected XSS, where essentially what's going to happen is we've got our victim, and essentially we're going to have a website visitor going to connect, if you will, via an active login session. So understand that we now have a trust relationship active with this web server. Our attacker here essentially will place a malicious HTML into the website that they can control, and they're going to induce the, let's say, the website visitor, if you will, to visit that website. And then what ends up happening is they can craft an HTTP request that when that user logs in, remember, they're already trusted by the server. And when they click that link, they click the link, I can say it, I swear. They click the link, and in there is that forged request, and it's performing some kind of unauthorized action on the website visitor, the victim's behalf, that they might not even know happens. For instance, they click the link, forged request gets sent to the web server, and now we have a fund transfer that happens, and comes down to the attacker's wallet now, and the attacker's wallet's a little bit heavier now.
Yeah, this one used to really confuse me because they would always say this abuses the trust relationship between a user and a server and an application, blah blah blah. And I was like, what does that mean?
Authenticated session.
But basically, you have an authenticated session going on, and if I send you a link that tells that session to do something, they'll go, okay, because you're authenticated. It's a really dangerous attack, and now you can see why it's gained popularity because of what you can do with it.
And now, Dan, I know in some of your shows you've done things like OWASP thing. This is high up on the OWASP list, right?
Yeah.
OWASP being, what is the
open source web
application security publication or something like that.
I'm not good
top
with
10,
acronyms.
right? And they publish a top 10 list of their 10 most prevalent and really, I guess, most exploitable common attacks
Right,
against
they call it
web
the top
applications.
10.
Sure. Yeah, and this one is
Definitely in there.
definitely up there.
Definitely in there.
So now when we look at the difference between client side and server side, remember, just to distill it down, make it easier to understand, right? When we say server side request, let's think of something like a vulnerable web server, right? The HTTP request is going to be sent via the attacker and it's going to be sent into the server and essentially attacking. So think about this, right? We've got a web server that typically communicates with a lot of back-end technologies, right? Those back-end technologies a lot of times are sitting behind a firewall, and typically in your LAN, they're going to have a general less protections. Not all, we don't just do away with protections. But I can tell you that a resource that's sitting behind a firewall is not going to be probably buttoned up as much as something in a DMZ, right? So your web server is in the DMZ, and that's what the attacker has access to. But the point is to attack that I keep saying venerable. It's not venerable.
It's a
vulnerable.
wonderful server. We've all
It's a
grown to
wonderful
love
server.
and
We
know.
love it.
Yeah.
A vulnerable web server, and then what they can do is, since that back-end or that web server is talking to some kind of back-end asset, they can essentially abuse that trust and kind of leapfrog off into the back-end server, which normally they wouldn't have access to. But notice what's happening. They're attacking the server itself. And then that's where that request forgery attack is happening. And that's the big thing with this one.
All right. Well, there you go. A lot of good information when it comes to the difference between server-side and client-side request forgeries that are happening. Plus, don't forget those cross-site scripting attacks, the reflected, the stored, and the, we'll say DOM-based, just to make it easy on ourselves, right? So very good stuff. And now, hopefully, you're up to speed on those different types of attacks, and you'll be able to sit with confidence at the Sec Plus exam. That being said, we're a little bit out of time for this episode, and that's all we've got. So we're going to go ahead and call it a day. More to come in this series, so join us then. Until then, have a great day.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.